Hey, Computer Solutions, this is Mr. Lupton. Welcome back to part two of our Google Sheets activities for the week of May 4th through May 8th. This week or this day, we're looking at activity number two, which is really about formatting, sorting, and also filtering. So we're going to talk about what those things are and then also how to do it. So you guys have done some formatting before, so hopefully this should be a review how to do these four things. But in case it's not, I'll walk you through it. As a reminder, feel free to pause to try it out yourself, or pause it before and try it out at this point and then see if you did it right based on how I talk about it here. So we're going to start off by using the bold and centered on all the column headings in row one. So I'm going to just click on row one to highlight the whole row. Again, alternatively, you could click and highlight just those cells if you would rather do that, but I'm going to click the whole thing. And I'm going to do a bold and center using the B key as well as the horizontal align here at the top. Next, I want to adjust the column width so that all the cell contents are visible. So a couple of different ways I could do this. Either way I do it, I'm going to need to highlight columns A through F. And I could right click and resize columns A through F to find something that kind of fits more what I want. That might be a little bit big, being 150. But really, the issue I'm going to have with this approach is that finding one size that works for every column really is kind of silly because now we have some columns that have lots of space in them and others that still aren't there. Another approach I could do, which is usually a really good approach, is to use this block here that has, it's at the intersection of the column and row headings and numbers, and it highlights everything in your document. And if I just double click between the A and the B, notice how my mouse changes when I get between the A and the B, it will automatically resize all the rows and columns, excuse me, all the columns to the size that I need. Now, the issue with this data set is that I have questions below it, which is manipulating that size to a size that I don't really want. But I can use this approach and then just unclick it and then drag just column A to the size that I want. And that's going to give me the size table that I'm looking for here. So you could do it either way. You could individually resize the columns, or you could just use the auto resize to make everything fit through the approach that I showed you. So we'll go with this for making sure that all of our cell contents are visible. Next thing we want to do is change the background color of the first row to black and the font color to white. So again, I'm going to highlight the information in my heading row here, change it to white font, which kind of makes it look like it disappears, and then black background to make that work. And lastly, I want to add borders to everything. So I'm going to highlight my whole range here from A1 to F10, and I'm going to add borders to that range of cells. So our final table should be formatted and look like this. The next section is about sorting. Now with sorting, what we're doing here is we're rearranging the order that the information in the table is in without having the information get out of sorts. Right now, there's not really any rhyme or reason to the organization of this data in this table. It's not on approximate sales, although that's pretty close. Everything except for the little prints is pretty much there. It's definitely not based on language or author's last name. So we're going to look at some different ways that we can reorganize this data to show these 9 best-selling books in some different organizations. So the first thing we're going to do is sort the contents in the table in alphabetical order by author. So to do that, I'm going to highlight my whole range, A1 to F10, and I'm going to come to data and I'm going to choose sort range. Now, the reason I do this is because I want to make sure that this realizes my data has a heading row at the top. And it lets me then pick which heading I want to sort by. So that makes this a lot easier. So I tell it I have a header row and I want to sort by author from A to Z. And when I do that, it sorts the information by author's first name. And now, because the information is in here the way that it is, it's always going to be first name. If I had taken the time to reorganize this to have last name first, we could certainly do it that way as well. So that's just a good lesson in terms of thinking about how you put your data into the cells. Do we want first name and last name to be separate? Separate columns, that's sometimes a good option. Or do we want to just put last name comma first name, as we see often done in like libraries? So those are, again, things to think about with the way that your data is presented. For us, we're just going to leave it as it is and go with this. So what I want to do to show that I've done this correctly is I'm going to highlight, again, A1 through F10, and hit Control C on my keyboard. Notice how you have the little dashed lines show up. And I want to paste that into sort task one. And again, I can click right here at the intersection of my rows and columns and double click in between to get everything to resize correctly. All right, my next sorting task is I want to sort the contents by the first year published from the most recent to the oldest. So again, with all of my table highlighted, I want to go to data and choose sort range. Again, I have a header row, and this time I want to do first published, and I'm going to descend it this time to go from biggest to smallest to show the most recent first. So we see now that my data is now organized by the year published with the most recent down to the oldest of these. And my instructions for this are to copy this into sort task number 2. So I'm going to highlight everything, copy it, go to sort task number 2 here at the bottom and paste. And again, just to resize all my cells to be the right size so that all my information is showing. All right, so I've gotten 2 sorting tasks done. Let's go ahead and do the third. I want to sort the contents of the table by language using reverse alphabetical order. So the original language that the work was written in is what I'm looking at here. So again, select A1 through F10, data, sort range, tell it that I have a header. By author, excuse me, it's not author, it's language, original language, and then reverse alphabetical order. So if I've done this right, RPFEC makes a lot of sense. So again, highlight, copy, this is sort task number 3, paste it in here, select all and resize my cells to make it look nice. And that's sorting. So sorting is very quick, fairly simple, and puts things in an organization that we want. Now, filtering, on the other hand, filtering is actually going to temporarily remove things that we don't want to see. So let's look at an example of that. So if we want to just look at the books on our list that have sold over 110,000, excuse me, 110 million copies, we can look at that a couple different ways. We could start off by sorting it if we wanted to. Data, sort, tell it we want to do it by sales. And it will do that for us. Notice it has the lowest sales first and the highest sales here at the end. So we could reverse that to make it easy to see. But what we can do instead is if we highlight everything and go to data and create a filter, we want to tell it to look at approximate sales, and we want to filter by a condition. Specifically, what we want to look at is we want to look for something that is greater than some number, and it told us in the question to 110 million. So 110, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. That's a lot of zeros. We hit OK. And so now we get rid of everything that is not over 110 million sales. And so the order doesn't really matter here. We don't have to worry about the sort. So I'll copy this, put it in my filter task 1, and fix my sizes so we can see everything. Great. And to get rid of that filter, to get all of your data back, just go to data and turn off filter, and it brings everything back for you. All right, my filtering task number 2 is to filter by everything written before 1900. So again, we're going to look at the years published here. So we want to select everything, A1 to F10, data, create a filter, and we're going to do year published. And again, filter by condition. And we want to do anything. Now it's tempting to do date here, but because it's a number, we're just going to stick with the number. Anything greater than 1900. So we type that in and hit OK. I'm going to just double check that I did that right. First list, we'll filter the list by anything written before 1900. So see, I did that backwards. I filtered it by everything written since 1900. So let's go back and fix that. Let's just change our greater than to less than and see it inverses it. So now we have our books that are written before 1900. So only two of them. So I'm going to copy them and go to filter task number 2 and paste that in here. And again, resize everything so that it's right. And then I'm going to go back to my activity 2 because we have one thing left. So to get rid of my filter, again, I just go to data, turn off filter. And my last thing says filter the list by books that have a genre other than fantasy. So I want to get rid of fantasy and keep everything else. So there's a little bit of a different approach here. We're still going to highlight everything and go to data and create a filter. This time though, when I go to genre, what I want to do is just get rid of fantasy and keep everything else. So I'm filtering by value here instead of by condition. So I hit OK. And you notice all my fantasy novels go away. Fantasy is obviously a very popular genre for people. So get rid of all my fantasy and everything else gets to stay. So I copy this, I go over to filter task number 3 and I paste it. And again, let's resize to make everything look nice. Presentation matters here, so we're going to do that. And that's it. That is everything that we need to see here, the basics of sorting and filtering that I want you guys to be aware of. To wrap up, we're going to unfilter this guy. So data, turn off the filter so that we have everything back. I might go ahead and just for the sake of keeping this in a way that I want it, resort it by book in alphabetical order and call that a day. So you guys have this piece done now, and we've learned a little bit about sorting and filtering, which we will pick up with and do a little more next week. So good job on this. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I'm happy to help you out here.